Hello and welcome into another edition of the Inside Nebraska podcast. He is Steve Marik, staff writer at Inside Nebraska. I am Greg Smith, senior recruiting analyst, also at Inside Nebraska. It would be weird if we work in different places.
Yeah.
And we are here for another rapid recap, kind of what we've heard over the last couple of days. We've got a lot of football here in the last 2 days. We heard, of course, from Mickey Joseph yesterday and kind of the Tuesday kickoff. I keep wanting to say Monday. It is not Monday any longer. Get that out of my vocabulary. It's the Tuesday kickoff for the week. We also heard from a handful of players, Casey Thompson, Nick Henrich, Ethan Piper, and Ty Robinson as well, which is good to hear from Ty. We haven't heard from him in a while, especially with him playing well here recently. And then today was coordinator day, right? Where we just get the two coordinators, defensive coordinator, interim defensive coordinator Bill Bush, and then offensive coordinator Mark Whipple also spoke today. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go. We'll start here. Mickey Joseph. The biggest thing he said to me, and there were plenty that he talked about, was he talked about the so-called sellout at Rutgers on Friday night last week. And that was the part that got a lot of attention, and I think rightfully so. It was a very funny comment. You can hear the laughter in the video. If you missed it, it's right here on our YouTube channel. Or if you're listening to this with the audio version, it's over on our YouTube channel if you want to catch that. But he also had another part to that quote that I found really interesting, which is he said his team needs to embrace the chaos, and he's wanting this Purdue game to be a sellout, and it sounds like he might get his wish.
Yeah, absolutely. Purdue at night, it is a good environment. I always think back to when Ohio State had to go to West Lafayette under the lights, and that was a Rondale Moore years over there at Purdue, and they knocked off Ohio State, and it was a very good atmosphere. I'm expecting very similar to that this weekend. Purdue is playing well. They won 3 straight. They have a 6-year quarterback who can throw it over the yard. I think it's going to be a really good environment. And like Mickey Joseph said, he wants that sellout because he did not believe that Rutgers was a sellout, even though Rutgers said it was a sellout.
Well, you were there, was it?
Yeah, I was there. I mean, no, it was not a sellout. There were not as many butts in the seats. Now, were the seats paid for? I don't know that. So it technically could have been a sellout, but as for butts in the seats, not really. There were plenty available. There was a New York Mets game going on across town, so maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, to Mickey's point, it was not a sellout, but he definitely wants the chaos and wants to sell out for West Lafayette, and I think he's going to get it.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to get it, and it's going to be an interesting environment, like you said, out there. We'll have full coverage of that coming up this weekend as well. But I think that we heard, like I mentioned earlier, some of the players that we heard from yesterday as well that kind of caught my attention. 2 things. One, you have a story up that's really good right now. Go check it out on Nebraska.rivals.com about Nick Henrich and Ty Robinson and never being out of a fight. That really stood out to me because it was something, if you guys saw it on Twitter, like Nebraska put out a good social media video, as they tend to do, about never being out of the fight. Nick Henrich had it written kind of on his forearm tape, and he spoke about why he started saying that and how that became kind of a team mantra, and other guys started to pick it up. But Ty Robinson, his play lately, really embodies that.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, it embodies Ty Robinson because you weren't hearing a lot of Ty Robinson's name, in the first 4 games. Then the bye week happens. And then, he has his best game of the season against Indiana where he had a sack, 4 tackles. Now, he didn't record an official stat last week against Rutgers, but that doesn't mean he didn't have an impact. He absolutely had an impact. Go watch him. And although he didn't rack up any stats, what he was doing, taking up blockers, forcing early throws from Noah Vedral. Ty Robinson is playing some good football right now, and I think he's going to continue to do that. And that speaks to Nick Henrich's motto, the never out of the fight, and plus what Mickey Joseph said about him and defensive coordinator Bill Bush coming and talking specifically to Ty Robinson and wanting more, because everybody knows that Ty Robinson,
he's got so much potential.
He has a lot of potential. He has an NFL body, but the production hasn't been there, and so Bill Bush and Mickey Joseph went and talked to their 6'6", 310-pounder, and they got a little something out of him. So I think that was a good leadership moment from Bush and Joseph.
Yeah, and what did you think about Ty? Ty did talk about kind of responding to that and kind of pushing through, and taking that criticism. I thought that he took it well, the same way that we talked either last week or the week before about Casey Thompson and Mark Whipple and kind of their meeting of the minds, I guess we would say, on the sideline a couple of games ago. We thought that Casey took that really well. I thought that Ty was really good in how he said that he kind of embraced that because he knew he could do more as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Ty Robinson is great. He doesn't run from anything. When he's playing bad, he'll tell you, I'm not getting the job done. I'm like, okay, that's refreshing to hear from a player. But yeah, I think it was really mental with Ty Robinson, and he just needed something good to happen. These guys, the past 4 or 5 years, even longer, they've been beat down. A lot of the losses have been piling up, and for this 2-game win streak to happen when it is before a big game against Purdue, I think it's doing a lot for the mindset of this team, and specifically Ty Robinson up front, because Ty Robinson is the guy up there. He's the lone returner from that group last year, who was really good, and up the first 4 games, like I mentioned before, it wasn't that great, but the past 2, they have been pretty good, and I'm just excited to see how Ty Robinson responds again for a third straight weekend. Yeah, I think he's taking coaching really well. I think this is with Bill Busch now in charge, and it's just a new flavor, a new way to look at things, a fresh outlook, and I think it's really impacting Ty Robinson.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, we heard from the coordinators today. Mark Whipple spoke to reporters today. I guess, what was the big thing that you kind of took away from the discussion with him? Because there were a lot of different ways that he went as well.
Yeah, he always goes a lot of different ways, but that's just
Right.
who Mark Whipple is. Let's pare it down to 3 things. He mentioned that, remember that 4th and 1 in the second half?
Yeah, I think those of you watching remember that 4th and 1. We
Yeah.
got a lot of chatter about
Absolutely.
that on the board. Right?
Yeah, so it's 4th and 1. It's in the second half. Run it, right? You have an all Big Ten caliber back in Anthony Grant. You have a 230-pound bulldozer in Jock Yant. But what happens? They spread it out. They throw a short pass on 4th and 1, and it falls incomplete. And everybody's looking around like, did that actually just happen? Did he literally just?
There are sometimes where things, it's aftermath and it gets second guessed. That one happened right on it.
Immediately, people are like, what the heck was that, Mark Whipple? And so Mark Whipple talked about it, and he said, he was right there. He was going to call it. He explained himself basically. He was going to call a timeout if he didn't get the look that he liked defensively for that specific empty set play.
Yep.
But he got the look that he wanted. And Casey Thompson also after the game said that at first he wasn't really sure about the play, but once the defense came out and they looked in that empty set, they liked what they saw. But apparently, obviously they didn't execute the play and catch the ball. I think it was Marcus Washington. Had an incompletion. So
good play by the defender. That's what Casey said.
Yes.
He did say it was a good play.
Absolutely, it was a good play. It was just not executed well. So we'll have more on that. I'm planning on doing a story later this afternoon to talk about that 4th and 1. And then also Tommy Hill at wide receiver. It was confirmed by Mickey Joseph yesterday. Yep. Started the first 4 games at corner. Didn't really go well. It's kind of been a rough go for Tommy Hill, a second-year player transferred from Arizona State. Hasn't really gone well defensively, but he's a really good athlete, and I think a lot of people know that, one of the better athletes on the team. So you still want to find a position for him, a role for him, and he's a good receiver at Edgewater High School in Orlando, and he caught over 1,000 yards in his final 2 years there. So they're trying him at wide receiver right now, and my ears perked up, my eyes got wide when
that's a super interesting thing.
Yeah, he came out in pregame warmups with the receivers, not with the defensive backs.
With a new number.
New number. He was wearing number 2, and number 2 is obviously Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, who just entered the transfer portal on Tuesday. So that was another thing, and we'll have more on Tommy Hill and what Mark Whipple thinks about him as a receiver. Then the third thing, just Purdue, veteran group. Mark Whipple called them, and they are 6-year quarterback Aiden O'Connell, Charlie Jones, the stud wide receiver, transfer from Iowa. He's
Iowa. Let someone an actual good offensive player get away. Sorry,
absolutely.
no shade to the Hawkeyes.
No, I mean
that might be a Brian Ferentz thing. I could throw in some Iowa shade.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Charlie Jones, just receivers paradise from what he came from with Spencer Petras and Brian Ferentz. But enough Iowa talk. Just some really high praise from both Mark Whipple and Bill Busch on what Purdue has. They have a really good team. This is going to be a really tough game for Nebraska.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And on the flip side of that, Bill Busch talked about the different challenges that Purdue presents. Nick Henrich also talked about that yesterday, just about they are as difficult to prepare for as any team in the Big Ten because of all of the different looks that they give you. It's really going to be a game that really stresses and tests the back 7 of Nebraska's defense, especially as we now kind of try to figure out what the injury status is with Luke Reimer and Quentin Newsome. You're going to need those veteran players that have played a lot of ball to be able to read and identify the things that Purdue does.
One thing I was thinking about, if Luke Reimer can't go, that means Tiva Vaugh, Malgan Clemens, who we call Pick City Vaugh, greatest nickname on earth, but if Vaugh does play some extended snaps here for Luke Reimer, because Luke Reimer was called day-to-day by Mickey Joseph, we'll just find out later on in the week how much Luke will play, but that's going to be a tough matchup for a guy like Bob, who hasn't played a ton this year, but has gotten out there. But now he's playing a Purdue offense that loves to, mesh routes, have one receiver going one way, another receiver going that. Communication is going to be incredibly important just to pass off these receivers who are going sideline to sideline. And for a new linebacker who hasn't really experienced that, like Ball might, it's going to be tough. You want Nick Henrik out there, Luke Reimer out there, who have been there, done that against these guys. And then the corner situation, Brandon Moore, the Central Florida
becoming
transfer.
A great story.
Yeah, he is becoming a really good story. A 7th-year guy, which is crazy, but he's getting another chance after a rough injury history with him. So it's good to see him get out and play extended snaps for Quentin Newsome, who was also called day-to-day and didn't play in the entire second half at Rutgers. So we'll see. Quentin Newsome is another one to keep an eye on, but I think Bill Bush feels good about Malcolm Hartzog on one side and Brandon Moore on the other. Now, Hartzog did give up a 33 and a 34-yard completion. Those are good plays. Malcolm was right there.
Position.
He was in
that's
position.
The one thing that I keep, it's different if he was, trailing the play and totally got burnt on the play, but he actually was in position, which is probably why he got pulled from the game, because it was more frustrating to see it happen that way versus if you just get toasted.
I think if you're a young guy like Malcolm, he gives up those plays almost back to back. I think you kind of set him on the sideline just so he can mentally recover for sure. Just settle down. You tell him you're going to go right back out there. So that's just an interesting thing to look at with the corner situation if Quentin Newsome can't play. But none of that's confirmed, and we'll just keep an eye on it the rest of the week.
Yeah, we will definitely be keeping an eye on that and plenty more here the rest of the week, both on this YouTube channel right here. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and the video.